Now we have come to the conclusion of the 5th Geneva Forum. And for the valedictory session, may I invite our colleague, Minister Nonzidomala, on the stage. Please. And with us, we have a chief guest, Madam Nicola Su from Taiwan, Director General of Taiwan Cultural and Economic Delegation in Geneva. And may I have Ms. Rixin Gekang, representative of Office of Tibet, Brussels. For this valedictory session, may I request Ms. Nicola Su to kindly address her closing remarks.
Honorable Minister and Ms. Rixin Gekang, representative of Tibet office in Brussels. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Nicole, the Director General of Taipei Mission, Taiwan Mission here in Geneva. So thank you very much for having me here today. I'd like to congratulate the Central Tibetan Administration as well as the Tibet Bureau in Geneva with the support from Brussels, Paris, and London for organizing this wonderful event to invite and gather the friends, so many friends, as well as concerned members of the international community to discuss the deteriorating human rights condition in China. So, well, just now I had the opportunity to participate this afternoon's session. I find it very fruitful and exciting, the discussion. I fully agree with the Freedom House analysis on the situation of the manipulation of China, that they have been conducting the most sophisticated, global, and comprehensive campaign of transnational repression of the world. I cannot agree more with all the adjectives that they have used. And of course, we've been discussing this situation on the repression on individuals. As Taiwan Mission here, I think I'd like to share with you our first-hand experience, as I mentioned earlier, our first-hand experiences of the Chinese manipulation and their malicious influence over the UN systems as well as the other international organizations here in Geneva, and I'm afraid not only here in Geneva only, but globally upon the international organizations here. Allow me to share with you, perhaps let me start from, well, individual cases on Taiwanese citizens. I think perhaps you've heard about the Taiwanese businessman who has just returned to Taiwan, a Mr. Lee. He participated a protest in Hong Kong, and then he was later on arrested. Well, actually, he first was disappeared in a way that his family and relatives didn't have any news of him for a long period of time. And then later on, people realized that, okay, he was taken by the Chinese and arrested on the charge of foreign espionage and the sharing state secrets. But then what the Chinese had on him was only that he participated in the protest. And secondly, he took photos of the armed police forces. And in his belongings, they found that he did have posters of saying Hong Kong, Taiwan stands with Hong Kong. And then they took his cell phone and then charged him on his private conversation with his friends. So I think these are the situations that we've been discussing the past 2 days as to the Chinese manipulation and transnational repression for sure. And Mr. Lee After he kissed goodbye with his family back in 2019, it has been 4 years since he was able to return to Taiwan just last month. So this kind of situation, Mr. Lee was not the only one. He was definitely not the first one. Currently, we have another Mr. Lee, a writer, a Mr. Yang, who is an activist. Formerly, there were other Mr. Lees and many, many more, unfortunately. I think that's why we're here today, to make sure that nobody should suffer this kind of torment, being charged on foreign espionage just because of certain cell phone messages with his friends and so on. But then this is just the beginning of the situation that I'd like to share with you. In addition to these transnational regression on individuals, the ISHR, the Human Rights Watch, and all the other NGOs here have made a lot of reports and analysis on the Chinese, this other phenomena of the Chinese influence, which is malicious over the UN systems and international organizations. Being here in Geneva, I can justifiably testify that and share with you our experience, as I said, firsthand, how incredibly sophisticated and comprehensive the Chinese are operating within these international organizations. For today's purpose, I tried to categorize 5 types of the China's manipulation. Type 1, direct intervention. I will elaborate later on. Type 2, blatant abuse of power. Type 3, sophisticated coercion through secretariats of any organizations. Type 4, comprehensive manipulation. And then type 5, redefining universal values. So for type 1, Chinese direct intervention, for example, by taking advantage of the rules of procedures of these organizations. I'm not talking about Taiwan's participation, international participation in the international organization. Taiwan is not the only one, but then I'm not talking about Taiwan. I'm talking about the Chinese using these rules of procedure to choke, to silence the voices, what they do not like, the voices of the civil societies. So for example, I do not want to name names. One of the organizations here within walking distance, actually Wikimedia Foundation, although I do not want to name names, but then I think the clues are pretty clear. Well, Wikimedia Foundation and the Wikimedia associations in many countries, they have been applying for observer status in this particular organization for years, and consecutively for many years. Chinese have been directly using the rules of procedure to block, because they refuse to join consensus. So the application of Wikimedia Foundation and Wikimedia associations in many countries, in France, in Switzerland, in Germany, and so on, this application has been blocked. Why? Because Wikimedia Foundation on their website, the Wikimedia, which we all Google and use very often, that there are information that the Chinese obviously do not like, for example, Taiwan. So by silencing the voice of the civil society, they are participating in this particular organization's activities and discussion as an observer, but the Chinese block them simply because they do not like it. So this is type 1, direct intervention. The Chinese mission would do that. Well, type 2, blatant abuse of power. Again, I do not want to name names, but then again, maybe some of you would be able to guess. The Chinese, this Chinese national being in the leadership of this particular organization, I shared with Minister last time actually, he unfortunately took the effort of systematically change all the reference in the archive, historic archive of this particular organizations, all the reference of Taiwan into province of China. So for example, there will be meetings, reports, mentioning Taiwan as a geographical reference, or maybe a participant list where there was a Taiwanese expert participating. So his alma mater perhaps would be my alma mater as well. National Taiwan University would become National Province of China University, which does not exist at all. But this particular case, that systematically the abuse of power, because this particular leadership in the position has the power to do so, and he did that, which I find very scary. This is only because, not only because this is a case about Taiwan, but then to systematically change an archive in an international organization. What does it mean by maintaining an archive? It means that 20 years later, you could go back and see what was discussed and what was written there 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and 40 years ago. Now, since digital time, it is very easy that people change their records. Can people do that? I don't think none of us here would agree that this will be an approach that we should take. But this particular country, China, did so because they just simply do not like the reference of Taiwan being there as Taiwan. So this is our case for your reference. But then I'm afraid that this may not be only about Taiwan. It could be Tibet. Right now, the Chinese are selling it, the narrative as Xizang. And then there could be other things. It could be not only nomenclature, it could be other more important values that we cherish and so on. But then this is what is actually happened within here, very not too far away, within the library, the archive of this particular organization. All the reference of Taiwan has become province of China. So this is the blatant abuse of power, type 2. The type 3, sophisticated coercion through secretariats. Well, Taiwan being a responsible sovereign country, we conducted bilateral cooperation projects with other sovereign countries. So during many of our allies, in their voluntary national report to be sent to the UN Secretariat, well, from time to time, they would mention these projects because it could be involved in sustainable development goals. So they mention the project, and accordingly, they may mention as well Republic of China, Taiwan. So the Secretariat of this particular organ, again, I incredibly cannot believe it. The Secretariat approached sovereign state to say that, well, please, could you change the reference in your report? Because this reference is not the same with UN policy. So if you do not do so, we are unable to publish your VNR, which I think scary. But then the Secretariat took the effort of doing so, which is because of, well, all the examples I quoted are related to Taiwan, that's why I'm aware of them. But then again, this is a Secretariat acting on behalf of one other member state, the Chinese, to put the pressure and coerce another sovereign state, which is, I think, also a sophisticated manipulation and coercion through the Secretariat. Now, type 4, comprehensive manipulation. I was about to share the examples of the Resolution 2758. Dr. Leiden has already mentioned that. So how comprehensive it could be. Now, they use this resolution to say that it has already been decided that Taiwan is part of China 50 years ago, back in 1971. You all agree, as I mentioned, you all agree. The Chinese said that the UN decided. But then if, well, just briefly to touch upon this resolution again, if you go back to check the wordings of this particular resolution, it says nothing about Taiwan being part of China. That particular resolution 50 years ago was about representation, the credential issue, who is sitting in that chair. From before 1971, it was Chiang Kai-shek's representative. After 1971, the Chiang Kai-shek representatives are to be expelled. Those were the wordings. It says nothing about the word Taiwan. Not to mention it says anything about Taiwan being part of China. But then China has been selling that and then saying that this is the one China principle that you all agreed while we were discussing the difference between principle and policy. all sovereign country has their definition of what their policy should look like. So this is the Chinese are very sophisticated but comprehensive, because they start from the very core. They say that, okay, UN decided that, so you all follow. And then to actually implement what they are selling this, you all agree with me, they actually managed to persuade, rather than persuade, I think demand, the Security Division of the United Nations here in Geneva and as well as in New York, that Taiwanese passports are no longer accepted as a ID document. Why? Because you all agree in 1971 already. That's their argument. And obviously, not many people would bother to look at, go back to check the records back in 1971, whether it says anything about Taiwanese passport should be recognized or not. So this is type 4, comprehensive manipulation. And type 5, redefining universal values. I think we've been discussing that already, rewriting the standards, the norm setting the Chinese are doing. So these types, we see already at the Human Rights Council sessions that China has been advocating developing states should prioritize the right of state, the right of the economic development over individual right, and especially the civil rights and political rights. And this year in March 2023, they actually introduced this global civilization initiative promoting a state-focused, a state-defined value system. China has been able to win quite a lot of country support because they made their narrative very attractive. They are very smart, I'm afraid. We are therefore, unfortunately, seeing the polarization of these our value system, unfortunately. So, well, I take these examples relating to Taiwan, but then I think we could all envision what the Chinese are doing, exactly as Dr. Landon mentioned. We need to be very careful as what is behind their narrative. What exactly is their intention? I can only share with you about my experience here relating to Taiwan, but what more? Chinese, we may fairly conclude that China's strategies include placing its nationals in multilateral standard-setting bodies, and they definitely do not hesitate to use their economic and political leverage to reshape this international order. We have seen Josh also mentioned about the economic coercion and so on. So I think, well, what I have just shared are the few examples of the worsening trend and the worrisome deterioration of the operation of and manipulation of the Chinese influence over the international organizations that we are able to see here firsthand in Geneva. So to conclude, I think we've been having very fruitful two-day exercise, which we all take home quite a lot. At least I personally find it very rewarding. And as Minister mentioned yesterday in your opening remark, that the most important thing is the like-minded partners to come together and to identify the issue, and then we could tackle and address the issues. So I think it will be most appropriate to quote His Holiness Dalai Lama's teaching that to remain indifferent to the challenges we face is indefensible, and that we must generate the courage equal to the size of the difficulties that we face. We must come together to form a united front to defend freedom and human rights, so that we could create a world much better where the rights of all peoples are respected and the vulnerable are protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola Su, for taking time to be here today and sharing her insightful knowledge with us. Thank you, Ms. Nicola Su. Next, I would like to request our Minister, Nonzi Tomula, to share her closing remarks.
Toshidalek again, and Your Excellency, Madam Nicole Su, the Director General of Taipei's Cultural and Economic Delegation based in Geneva, and I have had the honor and pleasure of meeting Madam last year at her office for more than an hour. So we had a very fruitful discussion that time, and I welcome you to this valedictory session of the 5th Geneva Forum. And also thank you very much for being here and for your powerful and insightful presentation. And so now we will be concluding the 5th Geneva Forum this evening after 2 days of robust deliberations and information sharing on China's human rights record, which is the central theme of this forum, which is the human rights in decline regions under China. So let me begin by first thanking, with sincere appreciation, all our distinguished speakers and for taking time out from your busy schedules, and for all the participants for your presence and participation in this important forum. And your insights and your engagements and effective contributions have been very instrumental in making this forum impactful and highly meaningful. So I would also like to thank all our moderators for leading the forum sessions on time and with quality deliberations. So what are the takeaways from this two-day conference or forum that we had? So what I feel is that we understood the different patterns and trends, different or similar trends and patterns of human rights violations that are being conducted in different regions that are currently facing occupation and oppression under the People's Republic of China. And we also came to learn the common persecution toolkits that China is using to suppress and control Tibetans, Uyghurs, Manchurians, Mongolians, Hong Kongers, Taiwanese, and others. The forum also highlighted the insecurity dilemma of authoritarian regimes like China and how it uses economic and non-economic tools to, in a very cohesive manner, to influence foreign relations and also to control international information environment and also to reshape the global order, as Madam Su very rightly mentioned in her presentation. And we also understood the considerable challenges we face in dealing with China over protection and promotion of human rights and dignity. But there is also a shared sense of understanding and a sense of recommitment to work harder and to work smarter independently and also together in partnership to ensure that all our fundamental goals and values are rejuvenated and that our future efforts are underpinned by prioritizing human rights and freedom, and that we could and should do more for accountability and positive change within China and elsewhere in the world. So I also would like to take a little bit of time, even though we have Representative Rinzila to thank, to give the thank you note, but I would also like to take a little bit of time to recognize and appreciate the team members, my team members and colleagues from the CTA's Department of Information and International Relations for making this forum successful. So first, I would like to acknowledge the leadership of our Additional Secretary, Lekshela, And I would also like to acknowledge the preliminary contribution of Representative Tilichukila, who is currently on maternity leave, and whose groundwork, logistical responsibilities have been successfully followed through by Chesangla of the Office of Tibet here in Geneva. And we also have Tibet advocacy section within the DIR. And we have from that section here with us, Rinchenla and Pamela. And we have back in Dharamsala, Dukdenkila, Tsetenla, Gunkhenla, who all have worked round the clock over the past several months, in coordinating this event. And I would also like to acknowledge and appreciate our additional secretary, Namge Sawala, and his team. Especially here we have with us Dawadumala and Sidubla. And we have back in Dharamsala, Tibettv team and social media team who have been giving timely news coverage and reporting. So for all of these, I thank you. And I also appreciate and thank our representative, Rinzila, who has taken on the additional responsibilities of Representative Chukila during her absence. And my thank you also goes to Kungo Frasila and Kungo Thuptenla, our Paris coordinator, for your contribution to this event. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our volunteers here. We have the president of Tibetan Association, Switzerland. We also have the president of the Tibetan Women's Association, Switzerland. And then we also have Nishula, who is responsible for taking all these beautiful photographs of this event. And we also have we also have other volunteers who remains unnamed but sincerely appreciated. So I think with this, for all others, the participants and the speakers, I really thank you sincerely and very much look forward to seeing you all the next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Nozudomala, our minister. And next, I would like to request our Ms. Rixin Geganla to deliver her vote of thanks.
Thank you, Chosangla. Honorable Kongkalu, Ambassador Su, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. After 2 days of intense discussion on human rights situation in regions under China, we have now come to the end of the 5th Geneva Forum. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to Ambassador Su for taking out time from her busy schedule to join us today. And you were also present yesterday. Thank you so much. And we also appreciate your pertinent remarks on the tactics used by China to change the global world order. I also take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to the distinguished panel of speakers for sharing with us their important findings, experiences, and opinions during the 2 days of the event. And finally, the organization of such events is the result of close cooperation between several institutions and individuals. It is my great pleasure to express on behalf of the organizers and on my own behalf a deep appreciation for the support and encouragement provided by such individuals and institutions. This event, as you know by now, is jointly organized by the Tibet Bureau Geneva and the Department of Information and International Relations of the Central Tibetan Administration. We are highly appreciative of the leadership, encouragement, and extensive support provided by Kungo Kalun, Honorable Minister of the Department of Information and International Relations of the Central Tibetan Administration. I express my thanks to the Additional Secretary of the Department of Information and International Relations and the spokesperson of the Central Tibetan Administration, Mr. Tenzin Lekshala, for his important role and tireless efforts in making this event happen. Our sincere thanks to all the delegates who have traveled from far and near to attend our event. You are the raison d'être of this event. I would also like to thank my counterpart, Sonam Srinla, representative of His Holiness at the London office, and my colleague, Thupten Srinla from the Bureau de Tibet, Paris, for their presence. And I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Thupten Gyatsola, member of Tibetan Parliament in Exile representing Europe. And finally, I also want to extend my sincere thanks to my colleagues from the Department of Information and International Relations of the Central Tibetan Administration, including the Tibettv team, who are here, headed by Namgyal Tsawangla, and Chosangla from the Tibet Bureau, Geneva, who coordinated this event over several months. None of this would have been possible without all of you. Thank you all once again for being with us this afternoon and also for these 2 days. It's been a great pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rizindla. Now I request Madam Honorable Kalu to present a souvenir to Ms. Nicolasu. Next,
So it's a closing time. So as a memory of this forum, we'll have a group photo outside the building.